I don't know. There we go.
We're now recording.
Great. Thank you. So again, this is the Vermont Apprenticeship Advisory Board. It's 10:02 in the morning on February 20th. Let me just do a run through the agenda real quick, and then we'll do intros. And then our first item of business will be to approve the minutes of the last meeting. So also today, we'll get an update on some funding, some teacher apprenticeships, some cleanup and program monitoring, and then the Vermont Registered Apprenticeship Open Door Info Session. And that'll be from Jay and Sarah and Andrew. And then we'll do board questions or topics of interest, just an open discussion from board members. And then some housekeeping items for us scheduling in the next board meeting. We'll talk about mileage reimbursement process and so on. We'll open it up if there is any public comment at the end, and then we'll adjourn. So with that, let's just do introductions. We'll start with the room since there's only two of us in the room. My name is Michael Harrington. I'm Commissioner for the Department of Labor and by statute Chair of the Apprenticeship Advisory Board.
Morning, everyone. Jay Ramsey. I'm the Director of Workforce Development at the Department of Labor.
Great. We'll just go in order on the screen. Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek Williams, the Assistant Director of Adult and Tech Ed at the River Valley Tech Center in Springfield.
Pam.
Hi, Pam Benoit from Benoit Electric.
Cindy.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Robillard, Assistant Director of the Workforce Development Division here at the Department of Labor.
Great. And Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Knight. I am the Apprenticeship Program Coordinator here at the Department of Labor.
Jeff.
Jeffrey Wilmette, IBW Union Representation.
Thank you. Gerald.
Gerald Scherner with the Department of Corrections.
Kendall.
Kendall Smith, Deputy Commissioner here at the Department of Labor.
Thank you, Kendall. Greg.
Hi, everyone. Greg Gove, Local 693 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Business Manager.
It's Greg. Ronnie.
Ronnie Basden, Executive Director at Vermont Works for Women.
Thank you. Rowan.
Rowan Hawthorne, Principal Assistant at the Department of Labor.
Thank you. Jerry.
Jerry Bakke, Director of Workforce Development for the UVM Health Network.
And I'm just making sure I got everybody. What else did I miss? Andrew? Sorry, I just can't see the full name on the screen.
No worries. Andrew Proughton with the Agency of Education.
Thank you, Andrew. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody. Great. So with that, just the first order of business is approving the meeting minutes from our November 14th meeting. Seems like a lifetime ago. I'll take a motion and a second, and then we can open it up to discussion. A motion to approve?
Motion, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeff. And a second by Andrew.
Andrew, yep.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the meeting in November, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Right, hearing none, motion passes. Great, thank you, everybody. I think at this point, we'll maybe jump right into our first order of business. If we've got any other updates, we'll share those at the end. So with that, I'll pass it off to Jay.
All right, we're talking about funding. So I'm going to really focus my remarks on federal funding. As you all are aware, there's a new administration in Washington, D.C. The first Trump administration was very supportive of registered apprenticeship and technical education and workforce development. And so funding opportunities that were started under the Biden administration. The bulk of them are the State Apprenticeship Expansion Fund, which was for the first time ever, the federal government using discretionary funds to fund state apprenticeship expansion efforts by giving states a sort of a base allocation. And that was planned over 5 years. We are 3 years into that kind of program, if you will. So I'm going to say SAFE, SAEF is the program, State Apprenticeship Expansion Fund. And I'm going to say a number, and that's the number of the grant. So it would be SAFE 1, SAFE 2, SAFE 3, and so on. So with our SAFE 1 grant, that is a grant that expires June 30th, 2025. We are working on under an extension to that. All states are. The state received $304,977, and that grant is funding the teacher apprenticeship program.
Will you say the number again?
SAFE 1.
No,
No, 304,000.
304?
304,977.
Okay.
We last year, starting July 1st, so we're in that current year, is SAFE 2, and the amount was 392,462. And that grant was focused on construction programs, and I might let Sarah and Cindy talk more about that after I give you the high level. That's focusing on the construction industry and kind of carpentry programs. And that expires June 30th, 2025. And so then we're getting into now SAFE 3, and we're in the application stage for SAFE 3. Our allocation for the upcoming fiscal year, starting July 1st, is $395,708. And that application is going to be focused again on teachers. We've started a teacher apprenticeship program as a pilot. We're planning to expand that program using these funds. And then the other piece to this program is that there's a competitive application that states, other organizations can apply for competitive funds. I think it's up to $4 million. We are contemplating submitting a competitive application that would also be focused on teacher apprenticeships. And I think we're working with the Agency of Education, but we might be working more with them to support their submission of the application, since the funds are going to be directly impacting the education system. And while we as the department want to be aware of and involved in and supportive of, we're trying to not be in the middle of how the funds get to the agency and then how they're distributed to the various projects. So that's kind of the funds that we are receiving from the federal government. My remarks about the previous administration and the current administration are simply noting that these funds created in the Biden administration are discretionary funds. And there's nothing in law passed by Congress that allocates funds to states. This is just a program that was created in the Office of Apprenticeship with funds that they have in their budget. So there is inherently kind of a risk that these funds might be pulled from all states. So I'm just putting that out there as a caution. We don't have any signals that they are going to do that, but it is within the realm of possibility. Cindy or Sarah, are there any other things that are good pieces of information related to this funding?
I don't, yeah, Cindy, do you want to?
The one thing that I would maybe just add is that our SAFE One funding, I think there was sort of collectively a situation where states needed a little more time to figure out what direction they were going in. And so there was a automatic extension of the funding from year one. So it allowed us to have 2 years to basically use that set of funding that we received. With our SAFE 2 funding, we had applied for a no-cost extension, and we're awaiting a response, a final response on that request. But our federal project officer has indicated to us that at this time, they do not anticipate that they will be able to award any extensions. So unfortunately, that funding will end on June 30th. And at this point, we do have some partners out there that are putting together some proposals around how to expand apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship with the trades. The trick and the challenge is that, a 1-year window is a little tight, honestly. And by the time we had formulated our plan and, made some connections with our industry partners to be able to receive an application from them and have them actually execute the work, it's a tight timeline for June 30th. So we're feeling a little bit unsure about that right now, but do have some options and hope that we are able to. One of the other pieces of SAFE 2 for us was to, and states are encouraged to do this, was to build some funding in for our capacity and staffing so that we can kind of maintain a level of, performance with the programs and the reporting and the things that go on. So that part of it we will be expending for sure, because we have spent a lot of time and around planning with this funding. So that's just a little bit of a change in the direction that we were totally prepared for. But that's the way it is.
Okay. And I think the other, I knew there was something else that I wasn't, that I needed to say. At the end of the Biden administration, they released the funding opportunity announcement, which is the kind of call for proposals, in January, and we weren't expecting it to be released until March. So we've had to kind of reprioritize pulling together an application for SAFE 3 and pulling together an application if we're going to do it for the competitive funding. So it's been a little bit of a kind of stop what you're doing and prioritize getting the applications together because they announced it sooner than we were expecting.
The deadline is March 18th. Submission.
So question, regarding the extension, so on SAFE 2, so we didn't get $394,000? Or we got it, but we're asking for an extension so we can continue to ask for it? Is that how?
Yeah, it's asking for an extension so we have more time to spend what we have.
So we received the money.
Yes.
And now we're asking for more time to spend it. What if you don't spend it?
Then it just gets, the unspent balance gets returned. And the way the federal government treats that, because these are discretionary funds, is we submit an application, we say we're going to spend the money, and then we don't spend the money. That goes into their calculus about whether we would receive another award or whether we would receive the total amount that we request in the future. It's part of their risk analysis.
Use it or lose it, right?
Yeah.
Can that funding
Fine.
go to support pre-existing programs to not lose it? Pre-apprenticeship in construction and trades?
Yes, we would just have to amend the existing application.
Which seems generally easier than an extension.
Yes.
Andrew?
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think Jay was sort of making the suggestion. I'm happy to be very candid on it. I think this part of this has just been a change in because of the change in the administration, the conversations under the previous administration, there was a lot of flexibility with the SAFE 1 extension, and it appeared that the SAFE 2 would have that same flexibility, but with the change in administration, that tone changed. So I know that the DOL folks are really doing everything they can, really good work to make sure that we can keep those funds.
Andrew.
Pam?
Like, how much do we have left of that has not been spent?
Of the SAFE 2?
Yes.
And did you have a ballpark on that one?
Yeah, the way the grant was written, we had set aside about $200,000 to subaward or contract with industry partners. And so we would have a little less than, and then we have staffing that will come out of that. So, you know, I guess what I'll say is what we know we have available to spend that for staffing was around 130,000. So if we can't get the rest of it out the door, it's 395, 260-ish.
Okay.
Does that sound right, Sarah? Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll just also say outside of the federal funds, we continue to receive allocation from the base budget that the department gets allocated from the legislature. So we're in the ballpark of 830,000 that pays for our staff, salary, benefits, some travel. And it also supports the delivery of an administration of the electrical and plumbing programs through Vermont State University in Randolph. And just as a information and reminder for everyone, employers pay the tuition each year of that program to Vermont State University. I think it's $1,000 per apprentice per year. And so that is the two levels of funding that make the electrical and plumbing program through VTSU work. Any other questions?
Just what, so we have approximately $200,000 for that SAFE 2 to be spent by June of this year if we don't get an extension, right?
Yes.
Do you need anything from the board on this?
I guess if you have some ideas for how we could spend that money, maybe Ronnie has an idea. Please reach out to Sarah and Cindy. We're looking for things that can be quickly stood up. Obviously, we have a short runway here, and we want to be able to spend the funds that we've been allocated and support the development for the continuation of programs that are out there for pre-apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, all in the vicinity of construction for the SAFE 2 grant. That's what the plan was.
What with SAFE 2, what are some of the types of things that could be funded out of it. And when would the monies need to be expended by? Not when do they need to be awarded,
Yeah.
but how long would the,
The grant ends June 30th, so then there's like 45 days after where we have to pay invoices. So we're talking about August.
4, 5 months, 6 months?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the runway that we have, 6
Okay.
months. The activities that could be funded, we could sub-grant to organizations, even employers. If you need a program coordinator, if you need, if you have an idea to pay a stipend or to pay wages to offset, those are all within the bounds of what this program could be used for. The original plan, and Cindy and Sarah were more deeply involved in this than I, so please feel free to fill in where I'm missing the mark here, but we were planning to provide funds to partner organizations like Resource and ABC, and that they could then support the employers that are participating in the programs, offer incentives to the employers to take on more apprentices. They could offset wages with some of the apprentices. They could use the funds to pay for mentors. So we were envisioning it to be really in support of all sorts of different activities that would provide some relief to an employer or a training provider, and that would incentivize the expansion of the use of apprenticeship in construction.
And you're saying there is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
so many, go ahead.
I'm trying to find the allowable, so I'll drop a link in once I find something that's easily digestible for folks. Sorry, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So just off the top of my head, I have so many questions and comments around how we can utilize this money. Understanding, so I'm just gonna rewind here. There was $394,000 for this SAFE 2. About 130 is being spent on administrative costs only. There's some sort of plan out there, but it hasn't been executed. And we have 6 months to spend the money or lose the money if we don't get an extension. Have we
Yes.
filed for an extension? And my next comment or question is, maybe this is a conversation taken offline with a smaller group to say, hey, how do we get this construction thing up and running and spend the money sooner rather than later?
Yeah.
So I can answer your question about the extension request, and that has been formally requested. So that is done.
Is there a
And
time
it's-
frame to get it back?
I don't have an answer for that. We've had a little bit less success accessing our federal project officer in the last few weeks. And in the one meeting we did have, the indication was that it was not looking good for extensions to be allowed for this particular set of funding.
Yeah, so there's something happening in the regional and national office that you can see the headlines, and the impact is they're not answering questions, they're not responding to kind of requests on the timelines that we would expect them to. But still, I think we can still amend the activities of the grant, even if we can't get an extension. I do think it would be worthwhile for Cindy, Sarah, to meet with a smaller group of you if you're interested in helping us to sort out how we can amend this grant and get the money spent. on meaningful things.
Just for what Andrew put in the chat, in case others can't see it, category 1, ensuring equitable registered apprenticeship program pathways and partnerships through pre-apprenticeship leading to registered apprenticeship enrollment. Category 2, creation of education system aligned pre-apprenticeship programs and registered apprenticeship programs. And category 3, registered apprenticeship hubs. Thank you. Other questions, comments on the SAFE awards? Hearing none, you want to move on to our next update? Teacher Apprenticeship April Summit. I don't know who's heading that one.
Cindy, Sarah, and Andrew.
You want me to start, Sarah?
Sure.
So, yeah, so we have been making a lot of really great progress with a number of partners. So as we've talked about in the past, we have a small pilot up in the Northeast Kingdom. I think there's 26 folks who are wrapping up all of the work, and we anticipate will receive their licenses within the next few months. And they're all really, the feedback that we're getting from them, from the employers, from everyone's just been really pleased with it. And I think that this has really been the proof of concept that we were hoping for our higher ed partners to get involved. So now we are starting to have really good conversations with CCV and VTSU around their making programmatic changes to make their programs more accessible and aligned with apprenticeships. So we are having on April 9th at Lake Maury a conference where we want basically superintendents and school leaders and our ed prep partners from all of the institutions together. We have we're going to have some keynote speakers from other states, some folks from the early childhood apprenticeship program that's been running strong for a while, to share how they made that 2-and-2 pathway through CCV and VTSU, and a number of other topics. But really the main goal is to make sure that we have those conversations with the employers, with the institutions who we are hoping will be able to provide the related technical instruction, to really expand that pilot and make it open towards to be an actual pathway to a bachelor's degree. Because right now it's just for folks who already have the bachelor's just seeking the license. Anything, Sarah or Cindy, that should add specific for this group?
Sounds good.
Do we want to talk about the possibility of the competitive application, or that, I mean, I think it's important to note that it's a discussion, but I think one of the things that is probably a reality is with the tight timeline and the comprehensive nature of this application, the work that goes into it may be something that would be, I think we understand that if we're not selected as a competitive awardee this year, the application is automatically reconsidered for a future funding years. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, Jay and I are actually going to try to iron everything out today. But basically what my team and I were doing, we figure we're going through with our conversations with VTSU, saying that we have the base formula, right? It's discretionary. It is as much of a guarantee as we can have these days with federal dollars, as opposed to the competitive. So we're working with VTSU on sort of 2 parallel project plans of the base level funding, what we could do to get stuff started, but then also what's the Cadillac version. But I do want to emphasize too that, like, one of my number one concerns is to make sure that because if we are awarded funds, my understanding is we wouldn't be able to have a second application unless next year if we wanted to expand to other industries. So that's something Jay and I are going to really discuss. So, and either way, whatever work that AOE is doing right now, I think is really valuable. So that way, if we do decide to apply next year instead, we have that set up. There's also state funding opportunities as well. We just, as folks are probably aware, would rather be pulling federal dollars instead of anything education dollars right now. So.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Any other questions or thoughts on teacher apprenticeship?
I just have a comment. I think that's great, helping teachers get to where they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, and especially really the focus for this would be for like people who work in schools who don't have the bachelor's. They're so great, right? Like finding ways. Those are the folks who over the past few years we've been working with and supporting the most, and there's a lot of them. I think we could really solve a lot of the teacher shortage issues if we can create a pathway for them. Thanks, Jeffrey.
I would add just really quickly that we, during National Apprenticeship Week in November, we did an open house for these apprentices in Newport, and the enthusiasm, the energy, the appreciation. There were people that, were just like, this has been a life-changing opportunity for me. I have wanted to, pursue a teaching degree, but I'm a working person and I have a family, and the feedback was really, really positive. So we know of stories, and we can point to people that this is really having a big impact on, which is, I think, really exciting.
Sarah, you want to take us into the next section on cleanup, program monitoring, improving communications with employers and sponsors?
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of work our small team has been working on, really just going in and cleaning up, records that have not been correct in our system. I think when a couple of years ago, when everything moved over from our old legacy system into Rapids, things didn't always transfer in well. I think there was still a lot of confusion around the responsibilities of employers and what they needed to do. They were used to kind of Department of Labor staff coming out to collect hours of their apprentices, and now they need to log in and do that. So we're really just doing a lot of record cleanup, and along with that, we've started our program monitoring process, which is a requirement and something we were kind of out of compliance with just due to lack of capacity to do that. So in the last 4 or 5 months, we've completed our first 5 program monitoring visits. Pam Benoit was one of our visits, which we appreciated her kind of being a guinea pig to let us come out and do that in-person visit. So I think that's been really good, just to really face-to-face meet with our program sponsors, find out what's working well, what's not. A lot of those individual conversations about the old yellow books, right, to how are we going to record those hours. So it's been good. It's been good. We've been finding, some additional training needs, some just a big breakdown, I think, has just been really good communication. And so that's something internally that we're working on. Creating, hopefully you all received maybe last week our quarterly apprenticeship newsletter. I think Cindy has that. Does everybody remember seeing that? Did that come through inboxes for all of you? Hopefully, yes. So that's good, because that's something we really just, again, need to connect, and we're kind of cleaning up our contact list, because that's hard too. One of the big things is with all these companies that we work with, which I think we have over 400 individual small companies that are involved in apprenticeship, is the turnover of staffing. And for some companies, it's, our contact might be the HR person. Other times it's a manager. Sometimes it's, someone that's directly mentoring the apprentices. And so when those people leave, if we don't have a new contact, so a lot of those contacts have just been outdated. So we're really doing some hard work cleaning that up with our communications team, and going to be having this quarterly newsletter that goes out to all. But then we're also looking to have some some really directed communication with the sponsors, with the employers, with the apprentices. And so to be able to do some training, some updates, you know, any kind of information that we need to get out in a timely manner. So that also ties into, oh, thank you. One of the things that we advertised in this last quarterly newsletter is that we're doing our first open door session. Like, come and sign up for this webinar, come and learn. It's just a short half-hour online session to like learn the basics of registered apprenticeship. So we put that out just last week in the newsletter, and we have I think 34 registered people attending already. So it was great, and that's without our kind of follow-up. So that's coming up on March 11th at 11 o'clock. I'm putting together kind of a short, it'll be like a 15-minute PowerPoint on what is registered apprenticeship, what are the benefits, kind of what are the next steps to get involved. And then we'll have some Q&A. And what's nice is on the registration form, people were allowed to send in their questions ahead of time. So we already have a great kind of some talking points that we want to cover. As we're going, we're going to, I'm sure, tweak and adjust this. We're already kind of seeing that it's such a wide audience, those 34 people or so. It's the full range. We have people, career seekers who want to become apprentices. We have some educators and counselors and you know, higher ability staff that are looking to help people get into apprenticeship. We have employers who are current sponsors who just need more information. They're not sure what they're supposed to be doing. And then we have new companies that say, I want to start a program. Where do I start? So I'm thinking, you know, as I'm seeing this come in, I'm like, ooh, a half an hour is going to be a little tough to certainly give all the information. But I think it's a good touch point to then make contact and kind of set up some individual follow-up meetings after that. And I think going forward, we may look at doing, you know, a variety of these sessions kind of with targeted audience. So maybe we will have for new, you know, new businesses that want to learn more about becoming an apprenticeship sponsor, come to this meeting. You know, if you're a career seeker, come to this one. So we can kind of target the conversation a little bit and make sure that we're answering those questions. But anyway, so that's really exciting. I think, again, everyone we've talked to is like, oh, we just want that connection. Not only have they had turnover, we of course have had turnover, so they don't always know how to reach us and who to ask the questions to. So I think just, again, between the monitoring, us going out and connecting with our partners, and then inviting them into these sessions and some of these newsletters will just be a really good improvement in our overall process. Yeah, any questions on those?
Gerald.
Oops, I think you're on mute, Gerald.
Yeah, I get a little excited when I heard you talk about the PowerPoint and it being about a half hour, and then you're gonna like identify the audience and be able to deliver it, and you probably be able to do that remotely. So the underserved, the corrections, and so we have Yay-Link, so we're able to connect to the individual. So I can see us connecting you in that PowerPoint to the incarcerated individuals on a quarterly basis.
Nice.
Because we already do currently right now enrichment events with your workforce development personnel at your regional areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see this tying into what we're doing with the Department of Labor.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely connect on that. That'd be a great idea.
Gerald, I have maybe a related question about probation and parole officers as another audience. I know they're not necessarily directly in corrections, but I, over the years, have gotten questions from different probation and parole officers looking to understand how to help people get apprenticeships, because it's on people's minds. Is that who do we connect to?
Yeah, I'm sure you can. It's not within my wheelhouse, but I can definitely pass on the message about you know, what is apprenticeship and the potential of Sarah being able to deliver that PowerPoint to them.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's still just so much I don't know, I don't want to use the word fear, but like this registered apprenticeship, I think just kind of seems scary and big and complicated to, even some of these people who assist job seekers. And I think it's like, oh, where do we sign up for apprenticeship? And I think it's just that basic understanding of, it's an employee run, it's a job, right? It's a job with the training. So you're working and learning at the same time while you're being paid. And there's just so much confusion around it. So I'm hoping, this will be a good first attempt at really simplifying the concept and giving really simple steps of like next process to start exploring what opportunities we have here in Vermont. And I think that's all I have.
Okay. Next up, just check to make sure there's no hands or other questions. We've got the Vermont Registered Apprenticeship Open Door Info Session. Is that different than what you covered? Okay, so we've already
Nope,
covered that as well?
Yeah, so that's the same one as what we're calling right now, that event. But yeah, we need a better name. So if anyone has ideas for that too. I know some states do it like a lunch and learn. One of them I thought was cute because, of course, registered apprenticeship, the abbreviation is RAP, R-A-P. So one is calling it That's a Wrap event, which I thought was cute. So we need some kind of catchy, because right now it's just like open door session, apprenticeship 101, but we need some kind of, if we're going to do this on an ongoing, I think at least a monthly session open to different audiences would be great.
Next up on our agenda, just general board questions, topics of interest. I don't know if anybody has any that they want to raise, but if you do, now's the time. Hearing none. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to add in that as we're thinking about, future meetings and plans, one of the things Cindy and I were kind of talking about is, today we kind of talked a little bit more about teacher and focused on that, but I'd almost like your thoughts on almost picking an industry to focus on for our future meetings, and really delving into like what's going on in manufacturing, what's going on in construction and healthcare, and really circling through those and what we're doing, what the current work being done is, who are the partners that we're working with in each of those. I think that'll just really help us all like have a better understanding of where things stand, and bringing in some guest presenters with each of those, some of our partners that are really big and kind of taking the lead in those industries, who can answer questions for all of us, I think would be just an idea for our future board meetings.
Go ahead, Jared. And then Jeff.
Trying to find all the buttons. So yeah, the other thing is we started talking about pre-apprenticeship versus youth apprenticeships. And so understanding what the standards are for each of those pre-apprenticeships and how that might apply to some of the underserved population that we're dealing with. For example, the corrections, and how we can help start that pre-apprenticeship.
Jeff?
Apprenticeship ratios, I know in the licensing department, with respect to the electrical end of it anyways, there's been discussion on apprentice ratios with respect to licensure. Have they contacted you, or you contacted them, or has there been any discussion regarding apprentices and licenses regarding ratios? Just, I know they're talking about it. I don't know if the department on this side has any input, or if they've reached out regarding any input from what you folks do.
That's a really good question. Ratios is certainly something we we need to continue to talk about. you know, I have met with the electrical licensing board, have not yet gotten in with the plumbing board, but that's my next goal. But I think what's hard is, like, I think we have a lot of opinions and advice from different groups, but I, at least, maybe Jay and Cindy know better, if like, well, how do we finally make that decision, I guess, what we're going to do. So, you know, right now, the way it's written in our Act 55 apprenticeship is for any occupation in Vermont that's a registered apprenticeship, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and then it can move to 2-to-1 after the apprentice is beyond their first year. So a mentor could have a third year and a first year and under one. So that's kind of how it's written. The licensing board, my last conversation with them, is really recognizing, one, that some small residential companies don't even have to have a master, which I didn't know about, on staff, because they don't have to pull the same permits, I guess, and do that kind of work. So that they were saying to a journey worker, they were saying you can have more than that. They thought, you know, you go up to 3 or 4 or 5. And so I said, well, I can bring that back, but I don't think that's something that, for safety reasons, that we just want to allow across the board. So I think, you know, and again, it says in the law there that we can have a request for a variance for those ratios, but, you know, that opens a can of worms, right? Like, how are we going to determine who and when can have it? And I don't know. I guess it's just a really confusing area for me personally, of knowing, like, how do we make those decisions, and do we want to have one rule across the board? Do we want to do it industry based? You know, what's the next work that we need to do on that? So I don't know, Jay and Cindy, if you can jump in.
I'll just add to what you're saying, Sarah, that when the Office of Apprenticeship came and reviewed the new statute with us, they flagged some concerns about the way the language about ratios was written. I do think it's a topic that we need to really focus on and figure out. And I would maybe offer that the next meeting of this group, we really focus on figuring out the ratios. And there's not a one size fits all answer, because we have programs in many different sectors, and 1-to-1 doesn't make sense in all of them. No, I don't know that it makes sense for us to try to do it all the way through different programs. Like, should it still be 1-to-1 for electrical in a 4th year? So these are sort of the questions we want. We want apprentices to be safe. We want to make sure that companies that are using apprenticeship are not exposing themselves to some huge liability, right? No one wants to see anybody get injured on the job. And we have this huge need to train and fill vacancies because of retirements and because of growth in the different industries. And like, these are just the tensions that are factors in this discussion.
Andrew and Pam?
Yeah, this is actually something I've been thinking about, because it's a question I keep getting asked from folks in the teacher apprenticeship field. And one thought I had was, if maybe what we did, instead of saying, okay, for this career 2-to-1, this career 1-to-1, etc., if we maybe created some sort of matrix. And this is a little bit from what the discussion we had last time. I recall there was some sort of like insurance rating I'm not familiar with, but I think Pam had explained that. But maybe like some sort of rubric of sorts of, these are the different things that we'll take under consideration for individual applications. So that way there is wiggle room for case by case. The other thought, I'm not sure if this is an and or an or, but is it possible that this could be also a competency-based instead of a time-based approach as well? Like, thinking about the teacher apprenticeships, if they're the teacher of record, they have the certain level of qualifications. So maybe in their first year, they already have met some of the competencies. So they could be a 2-to-1, where someone earlier on, doesn't have the bachelor's yet, working in a paraeducator role, they don't have the same level of competencies, so that would remain 1-to-1 instead of just that your first year you have to be 1-to-1.
My thing on ratios, I just think it's gonna vary on what the occupation is. I don't know how you'd have one right across the board. It'd be easier, but I don't know how you'd do that. But, and just to, in the last meeting, I had mentioned that I had, years ago, I needed variances. But that was not for on the job. That was for enrolling into school and getting your hours to count. So I don't think there was ever a option for a variance on the job, because Jeff, am I right that that would be more an inspector, the licensing board rules for on the job?
Yes, I think what we see from the electrical inspectors and the plumbing inspectors is that they're looking for, here's the master or journey license person, and here's the apprentice under that person. And so, well, we're discussing it as what makes sense for the registered apprenticeship program as a whole. Maybe it's different based on the delivery model. Maybe it's different based on the profession that the person is learning. We also have to rely on what the licensing boards want, because really ultimately the apprenticeship program is a preparation for licensure. We're training people, but we're trying to get people licensed where there is a licensure requirement. And so whatever the framework is that we come up with here in this board, we're still going to have to push it out to the licensing boards and say, what's your opinion on plumbing? What's your opinion on electrical and so on? And if they need to change their rules, they would have to change their rules too. So it's a hand in hand. And there's construction happening here. I don't know if you can hear this annoying grinding sound in the background.
That's what I thought I heard. So just my initial question was, so who's guiding who? It sounds like the apprenticeship is guiding the licensing board on the rule, because the apprenticeship creates the rule, and the licensing board has to follow the rule, right? But it sounds like we're getting guidance from the licensing board to reevaluate the rule. And I'm in full support that one size doesn't fit all. What I've always struggled with is the fact that, at least in the in the plumbing trade, you need a licensed plumber to do anything and everything, even in residential. In the residential world in Vermont, at least in most of it, you don't need an electrical license, which has always blown my mind. Which is why we have the apprenticeship, which is why we have licensure, which is why we pay our money for licensure, which is why we have an electrical code. But Vermont doesn't require electrician to wire a residential home in many towns, which again has always been a thorn in my side. So
Yeah,
what my focus is that in the construction trade, that we don't lose sight of the fact that we are trying to build the best tradesperson through the apprenticeship to get their license, so that the state can get their licensed electricians in the most efficient, effective, proficient manner, and not lose sight that this is what we do and this is how we do it. Yeah, we can create different rules for different trades and other work environments, not a problem. But I constantly see the erosion of certain areas to make it faster. Well, making it faster isn't always the best way. And sometimes people need to be accountable with the fact that this is how you do it. No different than we struggle with getting apprentices to fill out their time cards. Do it. This is the program. We adjust when we should, why we should, because it makes sense, not just because people are being lazy.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox, sorry.
Well, I think part of the maybe issue is where do we start? And that's sort of your question, Jeff. Is it the apprenticeship program that's telling the licensing boards how things need to be, or is it working the other way? And I guess the way that I work is let's design the program with the end in mind. And if the end is licensure, what do we have to do to get to licensure? And what do the licensing inspectors look for when they're out? And if we think that they're looking for something they shouldn't be looking for, then we need to work with them to figure out how to change what they're looking for. One instance is apprenticeship registration cards. That's something that they are always looking for, and we haven't been creating them. And so, the left hand has to talk to the right hand, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Agreed.
Pam?
Just, I kind of think that sometimes this apprenticeship and on the job ratios that the inspectors are looking at sometimes almost are two different things. So, and I kind of think that the licensing board or the inspectors almost have their own, they dictate on the job ratios. So it's almost like those two have to get on the same page. And I'm not quite sure how you do that. But just one more thing off from that, because I heard something about competency based. But if we get an employee that is from a CTE, they have completed their first year of classes. They don't have first year hours yet. I think they get maybe 300 hours credited. But if you have a first year apprentice that way that's completed class, then you have a first year apprentice that has worked for us for a full year of on the job training. They are night and day what these people know. I'm not saying that everybody from a CTE is going to be on the same. Some are more advanced, but there's nothing that's going to be on the job training. And I know I've heard something about trying to get CTE to have second year. And I disagree with that, because then you've got 2 years of non-work base. It's all classes and very basic on the, at school training. Whereas it's really, if you come out of 2 years, you get 2 years credited, you don't have the hours that you should. So you're behind no matter what. You can't take your test until you get those hours. So say you have to wait another year and a half to get your hours. Well, is that better than just taking class as you're working? I mean, I understand maybe the first year, but you get 2 and then you're out of class. You've finished your 4 years. Now you've got another year and a half to work to get your hours. Well, I would think that that's a big span that maybe should be looked at.
I just want to be mindful of time. We are at 11. I know Jerry already had to jump off. I'm happy to continue the conversation for a couple minutes. Derek, I don't know if you want to have any final say on this topic.
Mine's really short. Just backing off what Pam said. The ratios are really a struggle for our secondary students, just because there are so few slots available for them. And we're trying to get them out on co-op so that they can be working and earning those hours in industry. But it frequently takes us months to find a place that's looking for somebody. So, in terms of CTE, some sort of variance around that to let us get kids out and working in our communities earlier would be really helpful for a lot of students and open a lot of doors.
Thanks, Derek. So next order of business is scheduling of the next board meeting. If we stick on the same kind of trajectory, we're looking at May. And
Yeah.
possibly, again, if we look at a Thursday, same time, maybe the 15th of May.
Yeah, there is a apprenticeship conference the week after that. So the 15th would work, or the 29th would be the two good Thursdays on our end. I don't know if anyone has a preference of those two dates.
Is there anybody who can't, at least at this point in time, make the 15th work?
I have a conflict but it may work out. I'm just not sure what time it's the Vermont School HR Association conference I'm presenting for at some point during that day.
What about the 29th? Anybody have any major conflicts that day? All right, hearing none, shall we set it for 10? Let's do 10 to 11:30, just as a safe bet. For the 29th of May.
Okay.
And then, with that, Jay, who was gonna cover the mileage reimbursement piece? Anybody?
Yes, I can do that. So I know I apologize, we didn't have the system in place, I think, at our last meetings. It was on the agenda and I just didn't have an update for you, but we do now. So I think with this meeting invite, reminder email, I had sent out a blank W-9 form. So that is the first step for anyone that is going to come or has come to the meetings in person in Montpelier. If you can fill out the W-9 and get it back to me, either email or if you're more comfortable sending that in the mail, that would be awesome. And then once we get you set up as a vendor in our system, then I will send you a form link to put in the day of the trip and the mileage, and we can get you reimbursed. I was just asked to tell you that it is a little bit of a longer process to get the payments out to you, but we do have the system in place and are ready as soon as we get your W-9s back.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Any final comment? I'll just open up the floor.
Think of it, should we do the public comment section?
Yeah,
So we say we did.
We'll call this the public comment section. Great. Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion by Andrew. Jeff, was that a second? Right.
Second.
And we'll just say, anybody opposed to adjourning? All right,
Oh.
hearing none. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned. Appreciate everybody's time today. And we'll keep you in the loop as things progress, obviously. Keep an eye out for those quarterly newsletters, and we'll see you all in May.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.